Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Strange Planet. Today's topic is about a growing problem this country's been facing, or America has been facing, for quite some time, and it seems to be just ignored. And that's gun violence in America. It's a very sensitive topic, but it's something that needs to be discussed. And it's just getting sickening how this is happening basically almost every week at this point. And it just seems like the fire is burning and everyone's just standing there watching it. No one's grabbing the extinguisher to put it out. Like something legislation-wise, I think, is going to need to be done to get this to stop. Because, like, you have all these gun activists that are all scared now that, you know, the government's going to come and take your guns. But it's not about that. What it's really about is getting these guns out of the hands of total fucking whack jobs that would actually go into an elementary school and do some damage. Like, that's sickening. What do you guys think about this?
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, it really has to do with, you know, how people will handle things, like handle trauma and stress and pressure. And for this kid to do this way means he's not being given the proper options of how to unleash such stress or pressure. I mean, it just boils up inside everybody, and then they eventually pop, and this is what you get. This is not like someone casually went to his drawer, like, I think I'm going to take a gun today and shoot everybody. No, he had to be pushed to that point. Now, what his threshold is as a human being, I don't know. But, you know, this is an outcry for he needs help. He's gotten to the point that he doesn't give a fuck what happens to himself.
You bring a valid point up, I guess, but the real reality of the whole thing is I think it's a lack of also, like, parental guidance and at least some kind of, like, path to be chose. Yeah, because, like, there's no reason ever to do something like this. This is just sickening, especially when you got little kids involved.
In this case, the shooter was actually identified as someone who had an emotional disorder.
And this is the Tennessee one, right?
And was under mental health treatment.
Oh, boy. That's another growing problem in this country, too.
Obviously, mental health treatment was unsuccessful.
For real.
All right, but when you look at the options of what we have as a culture, as human beings, have any of you ever had therapy?
Yeah.
I think I have, like, once or twice. Not frequently, but...
Did it help you, or did it do nothing for you?
Well, it's hard to say, because, like, I'm not going to condemn it, because I still think any therapy, especially mental therapy, is something that is definitely already been proven to, you know, give positive benefits. But in my case, I guess, somewhat helpful, I guess. But at the same time, there wasn't a real sense of urgency. But something happened and I just and it just fell in my lap, literally. And I was like, you know what? Never did it before. Why not try it, kind of thing? You know what I mean? Like, let's just see what happens. And like, I could see it was for what it was. It was helpful, I guess. It helps you expand ideas and it helps you also kind of open your mind up a little bit, I guess. But especially in a situation like that. But
two things about therapy. Therapists would never tell you what they do if they get you to get to that conclusion that yourself. That's one of the things about therapy that I never found to be helpful. Like, if I'm here and I'm struggling and I don't know what to do, and you're telling me how does that make you feel, that doesn't get me to where I need to go.
I 100% agree with you there. Yeah, that just adds to the frustration.
That's one of the parts I don't like about therapy. The other thing about therapy that no one really mentions is you have to be willing to accept it. If you're sent to therapy, you're most likely not going to accept anything that is said across the board, whether you make progress or not. It's all going to be to get the therapist out of the face and get back to what life you have left. I mean, therapy can help. I agree. Therapy can be good.
But I guess it does have its limits.
It has its limits.
Yeah.
Therapy is like a way of someone helping you self-heal. No one's ever going to say when you go to a therapist that, oh, well, your problem is this, and you need to start doing that, and that should help you. Like a doctor would. You know what I'm saying? Right. That's what some people are frustrated with.
One thing I will say, though, is like, technically for you and I guess maybe the urgency isn't as needed, you know what I mean? Or Rook as well, I'm sure. But like, I guess I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that kind of feel like when shit happens, they don't have anybody to talk to, or they can't go to like their friends, or they can't go to like even their family about this. So rather than bottling it all in and then going crazy, I would recommend in a case like that to go, to a therapist, and this way you could let it out, and then you can work from there to see how you can maybe keep moving forward in a positive way without letting this weight pull you back. You know what I mean? So like if anyone's in that kind of situation, I 100% agree. Now, the second part to what you said, I also kind of feel that you also have to be selective about which therapist you go to, because there probably are some that are not, that great, no pun intended, but I mean, if you're sitting there and they're just
It's like any profession, though.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's some lawyers, doctors, just look at the police for Christ's sakes. But but like that's what I'm trying to say. So you have to be selective when choosing, because otherwise you might just get what Mark was basically saying. They're just like, oh, how does that make you feel? What do you want to do about it? It's like I'm here. What do you think I'm doing? I'm trying to do something about it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's different types of therapy and different schools of therapy in terms of how they can help. There's things like cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think is more helpful. But, it also depends on the therapist and whether they are knowledgeable and have the experience and basically the drive within them to help people. And it also depends on the person. It's a two-way street. You can't really force therapy on someone
You're right,
that isn't ready for it.
Because acceptance is the first step, just like with addiction.
If you're not ready for therapy and you're not ready to open up to someone, therapy isn't going to help.
You're right.
Well, also the problem, which the therapy is needed for, is a factor, because not everyone has the same problems that they go to therapy for. My mom just died, or I feel like garbage every day, or get picked on. These are all different feelings that people are having, and they all need to be handled, in my opinion, differently.
Right. And I'll also say, I think there's also a decent amount of people in this country also that might actually want to go get some help or might want to talk to a therapist of some sort. But the reason why they can't is the price. And that also is a problem, because that's restricting help to people who need it. You know what I mean? So that's something else to factor in.
Yeah, it's definitely not a cheap profession, especially if you want to get someone who is going to be helpful to you.
Right. You're going to be saying a lot of personal shit too. You know what I mean? It's like you're not going to just say this to anybody, let alone any therapist. You want to be able to trust this person too, Right.
And so I think there are definitely bad therapists, but I feel like a lot of them are good. It's just that they, for whatever reason, they get sort of used to people with, longer term problems and things of that nature. So there's no real sense of urgency in terms of resolving issues that could be perhaps resolved a little bit faster or more conclusively.
All right. Kind of moving on. There really is, I mean, regardless to even mental health, that's still don't get me wrong, that's still a thing. But there's no reason for this Tennessee, Sandy Hook, for this to be the outcome. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that being said, though, what do you think would be possible solutions, or at least something that can be done to prevent this from happening?
Well, the obvious solution is that the shooter, in this case, had 2 assault rifles and a pistol. Why a person like this, who was receiving ongoing mental health treatment, had access to 2 assault rifles and a pistol, I can't tell you the answers to that, but I can tell you that, we don't have background checks, we don't have registration. And so, especially in the South, where gun regulation is even more lax, you're going to have a free-for-all in terms of people showing up to purchase guns. And, they don't have to do anything about it. They just show up there, pay him money, and get the gun. And that is supposedly the Second Amendment. I don't think the Founding Fathers had that in mind when they wrote the Second Amendment. They didn't have people having the right to buy assault weapons to go into schools and shoot up kids. They did not have that in mind. And what the Second Amendment really says is that the citizens need to have a way of protecting themselves against government overreach. Not necessarily to start a war with the government or to, engage in any type of combat, so that the government doesn't callously exercise its power in terms of its military power or in terms of its police power. The Second Amendment was really just there to say to the government that there are people that will take up arms against you if you abuse the police power, if you abuse the military to the detriment of the people. It's not meant to provide people with a means of waging war against the government. That's not what it's for. However, in the modern era, there's assault rifles, there's all types of weapons, some of which I think are bad. You're not allowed to go and purchase a nuke and keep it at your house.
Right.
But, it is an arm. You have a right to bear arms, right? Why can't you own a nuke? It's not in the Constitution. Right? Like, that you can't, that's not an exception. It's an arm. There's nuclear arms treaties. Why can't you go out and purchase a nuclear bomb? And so I think that the Second Amendment is really outdated. It's anachronistic. There are considerations in modern society that should have long ago been revisited.
I agree.
So now we're stuck in a place where people are so stuck to the anachronistic language of the Second Amendment, which I actually agree with conservatives in their interpretation of it. It says, that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. And you know what? People should be able to go out and buy nukes by that measure. Like, I think that it's way past time that we revisited the Second Amendment and we recraft it in a way that understands modern advances in weaponry and can sort of take into account how we have rebalanced power in terms of resisting government force. Now, government has tanks, government has stealth bombers.
Yeah, stealth bombers.
You're not going to win a war against the government.
Yeah, you'll never win. Yeah, that's why I was going to bring that up earlier.
you could have whatever machine gun you want.
Yeah, it's not going to help.
Lose. Okay.
When a tank rolls up.
So get that illusion out of your fucking head. So then, what is it for? What are you having that assault rifle for? Okay. So if it's not for waging war against the government, because you will lose if you pull out your assault rifle and start shooting, the military, you will lose because they have access to better weaponry than you.
Pretty much all weaponry.
That we wouldn't allow common citizens to have.
Another fair point I would also add to what you said is when the Second Amendment was created, do you have any idea how long it took to reload one of those muskets? Or one of the, you know what I mean? Like, now things are much more advanced. So I don't think they would, it's arguable whether to say they'd be thinking the same thing now then, you know what I mean? Because the weaponry is very, very advanced and very, very different. Now, I wanted to bring this up as just a hypothetical, but what would you say if for some reason say they don't pass the legislation, which they're probably not going to do anyway, but what if every school, especially elementary schools across the nation, all had armed guards in there, like police, every school? Now, this would be, not something you can do overnight, but at the same time, because there was a state trooper in my high school. I remember that when I was younger. So, like, what if we did more of that? So this way, when one of these whack jobs comes in to shoot the school or the place up, you know what I mean? You already have somebody there. You don't have to call for it. It's already there. And if anything, we'll just call for backup. It's sad we have to resort to this, but would it make a difference?
So that is reminding me of the Republican mantra. Oh, the only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. But I think that fundamentally misunderstands the dynamic. When someone is mentally disturbed, they are not deterred by police. They are not deterred by anyone having arms against them. They are basically on a suicide mission.
But what I'm saying is you would already have some of your emergency services already in the building.
Right. So you have a cop in the school. So you enter the school and you go to a different class. You go to a classroom. The cop's not in the classroom. The cop can't be everywhere. How many cops do you need at every elementary school? It's not a practical
You shouldn't
solution.
need any, really.
You
But
shouldn't. It's a sad world when you have to have, armed police and guards
at elementary
guard
schools.
elementary schools.
Yeah, that's
sad. It's a sad world. It doesn't have to be like that, but this country is unwilling to revisit the Second Amendment in any meaningful way in terms of legislation, in terms of constitutional amendments, and even in terms of just sensible regulation.
They just do no regulation.
Pretty
much.
we can't register guns so that their whole thing is, oh, if you register the guns, when the government starts to take over and move against us, they know everyone on the list that has a gun and they'll come to your house and take your gun. Like, what kind of fucking fantasy world do you live in? You are not winning a war against the government. Period.
Ever. Especially by yourself, too.
They will bomb the shit out of you if they really want to win a war. Okay?
Yeah.
They will mow your house down with a fucking Abrams tank, okay? Like, you're not going to do anything with your assault rifle to them if they really want to go to war with you, okay? Like, I just don't understand why people have this fantasy about protecting themselves from the government. Now, other people say, oh, it's for, self-defense. Like,
yeah, God forbid a home invasion.
A woman, is at home alone and she has a gun and, she has terrible aim. So she needs an assault weapon to basically just hold down the trigger and spray so that, she hits something. That's what I hear Republicans saying. I'm not saying women have bad aim. That's what Republicans say when they make this argument. And so I just don't understand. Okay, that's not the Second Amendment, though. That is something different. That's personal self-defense. That's not self-defense against the government. That's not collective defense as the Second Amendment imagines. So why should you have a right to bear arms in the sense that you can have an assault weapon? That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. I'll tell you something else that doesn't make any sense. Remember Donald Trump's stupid idea of arming all the teachers with guns? Yeah, so that'll fix the problem. Let's add more guns, right? This is
right.
It's like we're stuck on stupid, this country, I'm telling you.
There are many soft targets in America, like targets where there aren't necessarily guards or people with guns, like a movie theater, like the guy that shot up the movie theater at the Batman movie.
But in all
That's
reality,
a soft target. Do you need a police officer in every movie theater now?
Exactly.
Is that the world we want to live in?
It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, I'm just so sick of it. And
me too.
More and more and more we talk about it. Like, I swear this country died after Sandy Hook. Because if this country could not get its shit together to pass legislation, that proves that this country has jumped the shark.
Yeah, or they just don't care.
2020, like, I think there were second or third graders. They were like 5 or 6.
Yeah, they were like kids. Literally.
They had just started their lives. They're not even cognizant of what happened. When 20 of them get killed, and our country couldn't collectively do shit about that. Obama gave one of his best speeches of his entire career. One of his best speeches. And he shed tears, and it was such a powerful speech. And you thought for sure this country is finally going to start doing something after all of the previous gun violence incidents. And no, we still haven't done shit. Like, what, a decade later?
Yeah, literally.
We still haven't done shit.
Now, what do you think is... Yeah, but sickening. It really is. What do you think is one of the biggest things that's holding up the whole situation here?
Republicans.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's the GOP. I really do.
There's no way to be politically correct about it.
Yeah,
like
right.
The Republican Party is single-handedly holding up any sensible gun legislation in this country. The NRA gives most of its money, like 98%, in the last election cycle, or I think in 2020, in that election cycle, 98% of its campaign contributions to congressional candidates went to Republicans.
Wow.
98%.
That says a lot. And then isn't that ironic that that's the same party that offered, oh, well, why don't we arm the teachers? Because that's just going to be more sales for the NRA, really. They don't care if these guns go off. It's all about money in the end to them. That's all they care about.
Right. So we sold you all these weapons. So now the only way to protect yourself is to get more weapons.
Right? Like that's the logic here?
It's just, it's insanity. And I don't know when this country is going to get over it.
Right? Until something is actually done, then I think maybe
the time to have done it was Sandy Hook.
Yeah, it was 10 years ago.
We did not take action after Sandy Hook. I think that's when this country jumped the shark.
Because the real reality, all these shootings and stuff are not happening in all these politicians' gated communities. It's happening in your neighborhood, in your society. You know what I mean? Nothing's happening there. They're in their own little high tower.
It could. It
could, but it's less likely.
No. Let's be very clear. This is how sick the Republican Party is. Okay, Steve Scalise, one of I think he's maybe the majority leader, majority whip for the congressional Republicans. Steve Scalise was shot. Okay, he was shot in a mass shooting.
Wow.
Gabby Giffords also was shot, but she's a Democrat.
Do you know where these situations?
Steve Scalise got shot, I think, at a baseball game. It was like a congressional baseball game, maybe.
Isn't that interesting?
And Steve Scalise, who almost died from gun violence, is still in Congress advocating for the Second Amendment and for not just the Second Amendment, but against any sensible gun regulation.
That says a lot. And like what I meant before is I didn't necessarily mean that it wouldn't, because it can happen anywhere in this country. That's what it's coming down to now. You know what I mean? But I'd say it's probably a little less likely, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. You know what I mean?
They don't give a shit.
That's the bottom line. In the end, they just don't care.
Like, let me let you in on a little secret. The Republican Party is the party of societal suicide.
Yeah, and literally the death of democracy.
It really is. They will, I don't know, they're so far gone that they will say or do anything just to stay in power, whether it's suck Putin's dick or suck the NRA's dick. Like, it doesn't matter.
Right. And the sad thing is they brainwashed their base to the point now where, like, say if Russia were to invade the U.S. like next week, half the country would be like, holy shit, it's warfare. We have to protect. And then the other half would be like, you know what? Let's hear them out. Let's see what they got to say. you know what I'm saying? Like, this is insane. Makes no goddamn sense.
You saw Trump standing at a podium next to Putin and calling him strong and powerful in his denial of what our intelligence services collectively, I think there were like 16 of our national security services that were warning about Russia.
That's when he took his side over ours.
And trying to influence our elections. Okay.
Yeah, he said he didn't do it, so he must.
He said he was so strong and powerful in his denial. Like, what the fuck is that? How the fuck was he still president?
It's an ass-kissing president. That's what that was.
No, how the fuck do people still like him? What kind of traitor ass shit is that?
Yeah, and that's one example. There's plenty of others.
The fuck out of here. I don't want to hear anything about America from Republicans.
Right?
I really don't. They're full of shit.
Yeah, at this point, that's what it's becoming. Like neither side is brilliant, but I will say that the Democratic side seems to be our only hope.
Yeah, like a lot of people like this false equivalence bullshit and be like, oh, the Democrats do things too. No.
It's not the same. It's not.
No.
Yeah.
The NRA pays the Republican Party. They're not paying the Democratic Party. They're not.
Yeah, they're not taking any of it. I didn't know that until recently.
They're just fucking not.
I give them a lot of credit for that.
All I'll add is that I'm fucking done with Republicans.
Me too.
Until they, number one, get their boy, fucking George Santos. Number two, do something about gun violence. Like, you talk a lot of shit about, like, oh, we need mental health. We need blah, 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 cops in schools. No, you need to stop the guns. Like,
and to stop bullshit like thoughts and prayers. That's like their cop out when this serious shit hits the fan. Rather than actually doing something, you get thoughts and prayers, and that's it.
You need to stop the guns.
Yeah, they have to.
That's the number one issue. And number three, get off of Trump's dick. Okay?
For real.
He's a traitor. He's a liar. Not as much as George Santos, but he still is a pretty fucking big liar.
Hell yeah, he is.
And he is going to destroy this country if people keep sucking his dick.
For real.
That's
about time that you start thinking about America again. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they need to do, and they're not. They talk a good one, but then the actions prove otherwise. So I guess in conclusion here, America's got a lot of work to do, but the question is, are they going to get it done? I see one party that seems to give a shit. It seems like it's the Democratic side. Republicans, the Republican classics are the ones I have respect for, but even that is really starting to diminish because they could be doing something. They could be saying something to fixing and resolving this terrible issue, let alone the laundry list of others.
No, they don't speak up until they're retiring or retired, and when they're irrelevant to making change in this country.
And that's why in the end I lost all respect for the party, because it's not the party it used to be. It's now the party of Trump, which is basically the party of bullshit and lies, and we can't have that.
The world is only going to grow more complex over the years and more potentially dangerous. And we need serious politicians in there, not these Tea Party or whatever the fuck you want to call these Republicans that play culture wars, and that's the only way they can, push people's emotional buttons to get them to vote their way. There are plenty of serious issues before us, and if we can't get our shit together as a country, then I'm afraid we're going to live in a very, very dark world.
And let's just get another thing out of the way, too. I don't see any reasoning or way when, the whack job like Marjorie Taylor Greene talks about, the country dividing or something. Just get that out of your head. That's not going to happen. Even if it did, the red states would probably just end up sinking in the sand because a lot of the blue states are helping them stay afloat economically, if I'm not mistaken. So let's just get all that stupid shit out of the fucking way, because that's not going to happen. We need to come together as a country.
I once had a Republican come to me, and she was like, oh, the Democrats are going to lead us into civil war.
How?
The only people talking about civil war are Republicans.
Yeah. Talking about seceding the union.
Conservatives. They're the only ones threatening to leave the union and fight and take up arms and invading our fucking Capitol building. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, have you seen the television? Do you see what's happening? Where do you draw that conclusion? That's insane. The way it's been recently in recent politics, Democrats are your only hope right now for civility and normalcy. It really is. Maybe this is just something a lot of people don't want to hear, but this is what it is, and change needs to be made.
Yeah, I mean, I find it harder and harder to be tolerant of Republican willful ignorance, let's call it.
For real. It's unbelievable. Would have been nice to I've been able to talk more about the greatnesses of this country. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of them, but there could be more. And when shit like this comes up and keeps happening and nothing's being done, it's not just going to fix itself. You know what I mean? It's only going to get worse, and it's gotten worse. In the past 10 years, it's been every other week or every week. And you think the GOP gives a shit? No. And there's only so much that can be done on one side if they're not going to come together to get something done here. So it's crazy, man. It really is. And that's our show for this week. Thank you all for listening, and know that Strange Planet will have new episodes on YouTube every Friday, and we will see you next week.